All right, how's everyone doing? I'm Rich CELENZA. Thanks for tuning into the Rich CELENZA Show. WTF are you talking about? So what I want to call today's podcast is don't take things you read too seriously. And I've been talking about this for like 30 years, maybe even longer in my life regarding this subject. And I don't know how long this podcast, it could be short, it may be medium, or maybe long. But the reason I want to bring this up is because I see more and more, especially on social media, people lashing out. Twitter, Facebook, mainly, I guess you could say, those two more than anywhere else. And especially with the things going on, with the political stuff going on, everybody lashing out at one another. It's kind of nuts. If you're on social media, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You see it on the news as well. But what I find quite interesting is when people read something, I always said, depending on the mood they're in, is how they're going to interpret that. And I get a lot of times when we text each other, we send stuff, right? And when you want it to be funny, you may put LOL, you may put the smiley face with the tears coming out like it's hilarious and all these things. So you have those little signals, I guess, to say I'm just kidding, even though you may be throwing a dig or whatever the case may be. But when it comes to, reading things now in not even newspapers, but I was going to say, maybe on an email from work, maybe you're reading something, an article that was written by someone online, whatever the case may be, just be aware of your behavior when reading things and lashing out. Because, I realized this years and years ago when I was writing, and this goes way back to like the I won't even say like the early 90s. I was writing these like homemade screenplays and these little short film things that I wanted to do. And I would write them, and some would be a comedy and some would be serious. And then me and my buddies, a couple of them, I would let them read. We would sometimes travel all over North America and we'd gamble. So when I was on these airplanes back then, we didn't even have televisions or any of that stuff. No iPhones. You had a magazine or you just literally sat there. So I would write this stuff. I'd come up with these ideas and these, write up dialogue and write up parodies or whatever, like make fun of a song, whatever. And then I remember with my friends, when we were all kind of in a good mood, we'd read them and we'd be laughing, right? If it was a comedy, whatever. And then I realized, like, if everybody was tired on the way home or burnt out or lost money, I would revamp something or write something new even and send it to them, and like they would just be there kind of miserable, like they didn't give a shit, like they were actually, it wasn't funny when it was very similar or just revamped. And I get it, they already read it once, but they just weren't feeling it. And then I started to really realize that a lot of times, I'm telling you, our moods are dictating how we interpret things. And I really realized that later in life through emails, especially when I remember when I was trying to break in the film industry, and all you do is deal with rejections, right? So you're already you're sending out emails, you're sending out your film, you're going through, trying to get distribution, you're doing all these things, and it's always no. And you're almost always mad. I mean, you're excited, you're sending out an email, and then it's a rejection. You're sending out an email, it's a rejection. I even caught myself, always feeling upset regardless what the reaction was. And a lot of times it wasn't that bad. It was actually saying, make some changes, do this or that. And I almost just always had a bad attitude. And you would think I'm doing what I want to do. I'm sending emails to who I want to send to, and at least they're responding to my emails. But I just wasn't, I always felt mad to a certain degree. And I saw myself when texting started to come out a lot too. That a lot of times when I read a text, I just always felt like it was just somebody kind of being, not sarcastic, but kind of being very direct. And they should be direct. And I was like, even when I would send, and then I was sending responses that were, I was trying to be very cordial and respectful. And a lot of people would be like, Rich, what's your problem? Why are you sending this text? I'm like, what are you talking about? That's kind of how I talk. I'm not going to change my disposition on a text. You know how I am. I'm kind of a silly, sarcastic asshole type guy that, that's who I am. So when you read it, you're probably just thinking about the bad. You're not thinking about and this was again before the LOL and all these different emojis and shit like that. But again, I realized people, depending on what was going on in their life, how they were interpreting my emails and texts. And I just want you to know too, maybe, sometimes a lot of us get in these battles, especially in relationships. I'll just bring that up when we're texting one another. And I quit this literally 10 years ago because I don't have it in me I actually did this originally even on the flip phone, because it was too hard to text too many things, right? It's not like an iPhone now where you can even talk into it. But if you remember the original, the razors and all that shit, it wasn't easy to text. It was time consuming. And then a lot of times, some people had iPhones. I had one of the original iPhones, but I smashed it on the ground because it never worked. And then my daughter Demi picked it up. That's a long story. So I went back to a flip phone. But I'm going way back here. I'm going way back. But anyways, after my divorce, I started dating, and I'd get in these battles on a text. And finally, I says, what the fuck is going on with me? How did this even evolve into this? And I stopped. I said, if anybody has a problem with me, they better tell me to my face or on the phone, but I'm not going to get into battle texts. And when I got my new iPhone, another iPhone, and the same thing started to happen, I realized they had a block component. So what I would do is if you sent me a negative text that was legit negative, not something like just having a conversation or being a little sarcastic even, or whatever the case may be, if you were trying to bait me or trying to start an argument with me, I would send a text and say, listen, I'm not going to argue with you. If you want to talk, we'll talk. If you want to see me, you could see me. But I'm just telling you right now, I'm not going to respond. Then usually a lot of times they'd come back, start lashing out. I'd look at it and I'd block them. Or I would never respond again until they saw me or they called me. So I would see how these strings come. I would just delete. I'm just telling you, if you are somebody who is caught up in these battles of words, and maybe that's something you and your partner like, or you with somebody at work you like doing, maybe it's a part of who you are, more power to you. Hold on a second here, let me get some water. But I'm telling you, that's usually, in my opinion, not worth it. Because a lot of times when you're reading those texts, you don't know sometimes how they're feeling. And sometimes it may be sarcastic. It may not be as bad as you think it is. Or maybe they're just trying to express themselves too. And I get that. But I just don't have the patience for that. If you want to express certain things, just talk to me, right? Or just come and meet me. That's maybe old school, whatever the case may be. But back to becoming emotional over what you read, I think you need to be very aware of that also. Because a lot of things you're reading, this isn't personal. Now, this could be online or wherever. Again, a newspaper or whatever you're reading. It's not necessarily legit. I don't believe most of the things I see, especially on the news and just in life in general. Like even if I see something, I could see two people arguing, right? I could see them arguing. But I don't really know the backstory. I don't know who to believe. I don't know who to trust. I don't know what's honest and what isn't. I always look at that approach. So when I read things, for the most part, I look at it as a pitch, that it's bullshit. There's a lot of things in there that are trying to kind of program me to believe certain things that I maybe didn't believe before, but they may not even be that honest or truthful. So I don't take that personal, or I think a lot of people take everything they read very personally, or they believe a lot of what they read. What was my dad's famous saying? Don't believe half of what you see in anything you read. I forgot that saying. Sometimes I'm just a little too tired. I've been traveling a lot. So, but back to reading and emotions being involved. Listen, when you read something, just try to be even-keeled and realize what you're reading, regardless what it is. Don't take it so seriously. Now, if it's something very, very serious, I get it. But for the most part, a lot of times what you're reading, there are things in there that may be made to set you off, piss you off, right? And don't fall for it. I'm just telling you right now, they're baiting you a lot of times. And again, that goes for social media. That goes for all over the place. I even, sometimes even reading a lot of books. I used to read a lot more. And what's interesting is I'd read these books, especially on, say, fitness years ago and all these different types of things, diets. I'll just use that for an example. And then as time went on, a lot of what they were saying was bullshit. And then somebody else would come out and prove them wrong. And then somebody else comes out and proves them wrong. And the reality is, the truth, I think, is within yourself. And reading is wonderful, and you get a lot of knowledge from it. But when it comes to truly figuring things out, I think you personally have to figure those things out by living through them or really studying your own body and mind to get the results you want to get. That's just my opinion. But I'm going to wrap this up. I didn't want to make this a long podcast by any means, but please don't take everything you read seriously. And, if you do have a partner, you're married, a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, I think sometimes we also don't realize that we could be the ones starting a lot of shit. We sometimes think they're the ones that always start shit, when we're the ones who sometimes start it. We don't even acknowledge we're starting it, but we do. And I just did a podcast on Stop Being a Dick. And I think, and that goes for men and women. I think a lot of times we want to accuse other people that the way they talk to us or the way they text us or the way they email with us is not right. But a lot of times you don't realize a lot of things that you're sending to, maybe even originally, isn't right either. You just think it's right because you're voicing your own opinion. And you think your perspective is right and theirs is wrong, or you only think your perspective is right and everybody's wrong, right? And I just think sometimes we just need to become very self-aware of what we're doing and quit blaming others, because I see that especially in a lot of relationships, even with my friends, family members, and others, is a lot of times we really have to say we're in charge of setting the tone. So if even somebody texts us or emails us something shitty, and we have to set the tone to respond in the way we believe that is right, but you have to realize if you want something done, you have to go the right way about it. And a lot of times we don't, because again, we let others kind of take us down a road or a path that is brutal. Don't fall for it and don't start it, in my opinion, because usually, is the argument worth it? And I think I did that on that podcast, Don't Be a Dick, as well. A lot of times, or I maybe even said it in this one, when you're going to battle, is it worth it? Especially when it's through texting, emailing, and, just a younger people, I think, or Facebook messaging. I think I see this with a lot of younger people. They're better at corresponding through a phone because they can kind of hide. And that's the one thing that aggravates me more than anything is the hiders. I call them the ostriches because they put their head in the, in the sand or on the ground. They hide. Everyone's tough on an email and a text and a Facebook Messenger or whatever message. I don't care where it's at. But then when you get them face to face, they have a whole different disposition. So I'll just say, I'm going to wrap up here. If you have somebody that is kind of, that you can't, if they're family members, colleagues, or whatever, and they're always kind of sending shitty emails or negative emails or sending you shit you don't want to see, confront them. Because it's not fair to you. You don't have to, pay it, even though, you have to work with these people. And I get if your boss has to send you emails, you have to read them. I get it, or other people, we get it in texting as well. But I'm talking more personal. Don't fall for that shit. You know what I mean? Don't waste your time going, because you don't realize sometimes how much time we spend texting, emailing, and doing all these things when literally you could get on the phone and address something that could take 5 minutes, or you could be texting and emailing each other, which takes hours after you look at the whole correspondence. I think we definitely have learned, or not even learned, we're over-communicating through writing, right? And I think we don't want to really acknowledge that, but we really are, where a lot of things could be done very quickly, a lot less aggravation, and much more thorough and clearly. That's just my opinion. So All right, if you get a chance, you might also want to check out my YouTube channel. I've been doing a lot of different things all over North America, visiting some of my favorite Italian restaurants, coffee houses. I've been in New York, Boston. I did some there, a couple in Canada. Some fitness videos as well. If you get a chance, check those out. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So, all right, I'm going to wrap it up there. Take care, and if you're traveling, safe travels.